Welcome and good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here for this session for EcoHomes, which is also part of our Eco Action project. So we're very excited, to see so many people here interested in this topic and to participate in this discussion. Not only just hearing from our speakers, we have three this evening, but also, for the opportunity to join the discussion, to share your own views, your own experiences, and maybe also questions about sustainability and in your own households, and also possibly you can also share your tips how you do in your own home. So as I mentioned before, this is part of our EcoAction program. And in this evening session, we are moving from the individual actions to collective decisions in our households. So from those who share their homes with families or friends, you might know or experience that is taking responsibility of sustainable decisions can be challenging. Doing it at the household level bring things to another level because, as I said, most of the time we are sharing the space with other people, and our decisions then involve also what others think or others feel. So this exercise can be quite challenging. So this evening, we will be exploring this topic with three very special guests, Julie Johnston, Lucy Plummer, and Merylene Chitharai. To start this conversation, I want to introduce you, Julie Johnston, who is joining us from Canada. So she's a climate activist and teacher with a passion for permaculture and teaching children how to grow their own food. She collaborates globally with educators through Green Heart Education to promote education for sustainability. Julie, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much. It's really fun to speaking to people in other parts of the world today. So thank you for attending. So what I want to present to you today is one solution to many problems, and that I believe is that we focus on individuals and communities and businesses and government, but in fact, the unit of change in human societies is the family. And um, when my husband and I, he's the Climate Emergency Institute, and I'm Green Heart Education. He's the brains and I'm the heart kind of thing. So when we proposed that the basic unit of society is the family, we're defining it as a household. And that's no matter who the members are, as long as you're living together. And then I realized I was just talking the other day with the million vegan grandmothers, and a lot of grandparents are wanting to help guide their grandchildren to a better place in their lives, with less addiction to all their devices and more time spent with the rest of nature. So um, I'm talking about grandparents as well. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Specifically, the solution of sustainable development has not been applied to the family unit. And Dennis Meadows, you might remember, he was a co-author of Limits to Growth. He now calls it survivable development. Like we have sort of leapfrogged over sustainable development right to we've got to make these transformative changes in order to survive. The three pillars of sustainable development have been promoted as successive and overlapping phases of family development. So I'm sure you folks all know, here in North America, people didn't latch on to sustainable development as a brand new paradigm that could have been quite transformative. But I think that you did in other parts of the world, and so you know that they're the three pillars. And so Mathis Wackernagel was a PhD student who came up with his professor, Reese, came up with the idea of the ecological footprint. And he said, we always think sustainability is so complicated, but it's actually a very simple concept. How can we all live well within this one planet that we have? And that's all there is. And he says, what's hard about sustainability is the emotional drama around it. But intellectually, it's incredibly simple. So here's how I believe we can apply it to families. So families yearn for strength, and we could call that social pillar. They yearn for security, So that's the economic pillar. And also sustainability. They want to be doing the right thing in the world, and they want what they have to last. And so that's environmental. So families have to be socially strong and economically secure before being environmentally friendly is going to be on their radar. So what can that look like? Let's have a look. I love, Lucy, this is for you, I guess. Buddha said that a family is a place where minds come in contact with one another. If these minds love one another, the home will be as beautiful as a flower garden. But if these minds get out of harmony with one another, it is like a storm that plays havoc with the garden. So, becoming socially strong as a family, what does that look like? So, here I have a list of examples here. I'm not going to go into each of them, but I want to highlight a few. So, child honoring. Many of you might know the music of Raffi. He's a hero for little kids because of his music, and he has written child honoring, how to turn the world around. You can see the book cover there. It's quite an important concept to always place children at the center and their needs at the center of our discussions, our planning, our problem solving, and our decision making. But families also need to be consciously doing all of these things, deciding and reinforcing together your family's social ethics and virtues, and having rites of passage and celebrations and rituals together, creating your family mythology. So, using photo albums and memorabilia and bedtime stories, um, creating family spirituality together, and making your family democratic so that kids grow up understanding that they have a voice, right? Um, Share media. So media literacy means you're learning how media is um, impacting us, is brainwashing us without our ever knowing it. So when you're consuming media together, when you're watching movies or watching TV together, you can be talking about, sure, talk about the show itself or the movie itself, but also talk about what's underneath. What is it trying to get us to do or to buy or to believe? Doing artsy things together, and being aware of your health together as a family. And then there's nonviolent communication, which you probably all know about, and effective conflict resolution. Good old super nanny to the rescue. Cooperative games you can be playing instead of playing competitive games. We can all go back to practicing gratitude and saying grace together at meal times. We've kind of lost that tradition, at least here in North America. Going plant-based together. I was vegetarian for, oh my, 30 years, 40 years before I realized that the the cheese and the milk and the eggs were not gifts from the animals as I'd always believed. They are stolen from the animals. And the World Peace Diet, which you can see here, the book by Will Tuttle, is what turned me around. Then also, and this one is especially important for grandparents, is getting kids out into the rest of nature, helping them create an ecological identity and self-esteem around being good to the rest of nature. And then there's family economic development. So things like becoming self-sufficient as a family. It's hard to do that, but to do canning together of the food that you've grown together and things like that. Um, I just want to pop down these. I want to get to the environmental one. Ethical investing is so important. If you have any investments, is to make sure you know what you're investing in, because so many of our pensions, our investment funds are supporting the very extractive industries that are destroying the biosphere. Creating savings plans together and ethical education funds, distributing the family wealth so that kids are getting their allowance, they're becoming more and more independent economically, but you're also sharing the family labor. um, the whole world of voluntary simplicity, living more with less. I hope you know this book. It's the most incredible book by Doris Jansen Longacre, and it's a Mennonite tradition of literally living more with less, so having less of a footprint upon the earth. And a part of that is shopping in thrift stores, buying secondhand. You can also be doing family volunteer projects together, where you're helping the less fortunate people the less advantaged people, so their children aren't or grandchildren aren't in a bubble of privilege. Certainly, energy conservation and recycling and waste reduction. Voting with the family's money. What shall we spend our money on so that we know that we're contributing to good in the world? Avoiding debt together. Taking advantage of micro lending or doing some micro lending of your own. If you have a kind of a pot of money, you can be helping other people put solar panels up or things like that. Cooperative housing, co-housing, building an intentional community. And that can even be within your neighborhood. You don't have to move to a new place. You can start talking to your community about, hey, can we buy things together to save money? And also because not every house needs their own lawnmower that's used for 1 hour a week, if that. You can be shopping at co-ops. You can also start a co-op and you can start buying local and choosing quality over quantity. I can tell you this book on the bottom right is another book that was quite transformative for me. How to Survive Without a Salary. It's just this looking at the world through a conserver lens rather than a consumer lens. And then there's family environmental development. So again, I put voluntary simplicity on there because it's not just about saving money, it's also about being kinder to the earth by buying less, consuming less. Environmental citizenship, sorry, that the picture on the top here on the right, that's a Canadian um, program and publication, a journey in environmental citizenship. And it actually looks people or yeah, I guess there's a lot of going downstream when you live in Canada, but takes people from towns and cities right out to the sea. So you can see the impacts of your lifestyle out at the end in the ocean. Creating a family eco-spirituality, a form of spirituality that includes the rest of nature. Staycations and learning about your bioregion, learning what your ecological footprint is and how you can lower it. All the energy conservation strategies that you can do at home. Just buying less, reducing your transportation emissions by sharing transportation. So car sharing, carpooling, walking school buses, just taking the public transit, things like that, like just very consciously saying, how can we emit fewer greenhouse gases? Family fitness through reduced car dependency. Also, family labor to displace energy consumption. There's a lovely family in California that has just, I don't know, it's about maybe 1/10 of an acre in Pasadena, but they do everything by hand. And they're totally off grid in the middle of Pasadena, right by a big highway. A fascinating example of sharing the labor, but then doing the labor yourself to cut down on emissions. Eating low on the food chain and eating organic foods. They're both good for the environment, good as well as good for our health, and really good for the animals, right? Green home audits, helping the kids in your family, maybe your spouse as well, see where energy is leaving without being useful. Support green schools and outdoor education. Talking to school trustees is really, really important. Getting schools to go vegan, for example. I don't know about in Europe, but in North America, fun days always include hot dogs, which are carcinogenic. Why are we feeding our kids carcinogenic treats on a fun day at school? Talking about green burials, spouse, making gifts together, giving green gifts to each other, working on neighborhood projects together, and playing outdoors together. That we're not going to get our kids off of devices without inviting them to come outside with us, maybe go for a bike ride or go for a hike or go for a paddle somewhere. Oh, I didn't read the Rachel Carson quote. I love this one. If a child is to keep their inborn sense of wonder, they need the companionship of at least one adult who can share it, rediscovering with them the joy, excitement, and mystery of the world we live in. Kids need their grown-ups to be It's like we don't go to a new restaurant unless someone recommends it, or maybe we go there with a friend who's already been there. We can't get kids out into the natural world unless we take them out. So let's be the adults who do that. Herb Lindgren said a sustainable family creates a safe, positive, and supportive environment, allowing all family members to thrive and develop their fullest potential over the family life cycle. And the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development said human beings are at the center of our concerns for sustainable development. In fact, the fundamental global community is the human family itself. So if we be doing these things at the family level, then we can start to see humanity as one family, and instead of as, kind of separate tribes. And finally, because of who we're talking with, I wanted to include Franklin Roosevelt's peace, like charity, begins at home. And there's my contact information. There's a whole page with all of that information called Sustainable Family Development on my website at greenhearted.org. And thank you for your attention and for listening, letting me share.
Thank you very much. It was a
You're very
very
welcome.
beautiful presentation. Okay, so to continue now, I will introduce you to Lucy. Lucy is a youth engagement practitioner and consultant, and she is focused on action supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So she works with the Center for Applied Buddhism at the Soka Gakkai International Office for the UN Affairs. Lucy, you can please take it away. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Julie, for that really wonderful presentation. So many really great ideas I had never thought of before. So I'm looking forward to receiving the list afterwards. Thank you so much for, creating this opportunity for us to come together and speak a bit more about, what actions we can take in our homes. As Julie said, this is a unit of society that often gets looked over. So it's wonderful that we can speak about this. My perspective, I guess, is a little bit different. As Yvonne said, my work involves really trying to enable young people, particularly, to take action, with the framework of the SDGs as a guide. So it's not so much, just really promoting the UN as it is and, trying to, work for realizing the work of the UN, but more to do with empowering, voices at the grassroots to feel that actually their voices can make a difference and they can be part of, these big conversations and actually bring them back to the local and make change there. So I really, I spend so much time really thinking how to connect the global and the local together to really make things feel tangible. And so I'm a real supporter of kind of the view that individuals, or I should say, ordinary citizens are the protagonists of change in society. I think often we think, it's governments or businesses who can make change, but we ourselves, especially collectively, have immense power to make change. And, I really feel that civil society, as they're called in the UN language, we have a really important role in empowering the UN to live up to the expectations that the world has of it. So that's really kind of the perspective that I come from. And I've been involved in UN processes not very long, actually, just about 3 or 4 years now. And I've seen with my, from being in these spaces, just how powerful the voices of, the civil society groups are in really calling for justice, calling for human rights perspectives to be brought into decision making, calling for eco-justice more and more, and calling out hypocrisies and, holding governments to account. Like this, I feel, is the real strength of the voice of civil society groups in the UN. And I feel so passionate about, as many of us as possible being part of those conversations, because really without those voices, we are left with, governments and businesses making decisions on our behalf. And a lot of the time they have, very kind of narrow interests. So all of these, elements that I mentioned, human rights and eco-justice and social justice, can very easily be left out of the conversations and out of decision-making processes. So I really try to encourage youth to really get involved, even if they don't, like politics. I don't really myself, but I feel that, it's really my responsibility to stand up and use my voice. So in my presentation today, I don't think I'm going to get a chance to cover all of what I hope to, but we'll make a start anyway. So firstly, what do we mean? What do I mean by international effort? So again, this is a UN context. So so this means, those agreements that are made between countries known as member states at the UN to really work together to tackle certain issues and crises that are going on. So these are often referred to as treaties or conventions that work on specific issues. So apologies if you already know this, but maybe it would be helpful for anyone who's not really familiar with the UN system, and just to give a bit of a very, very light context. So the UNEP, UN Environmental Programme, is the part of the UN that is responsible for coordinating the UN's response to environmental issues. Currently, there's 15 environmental agreements tackling issues like climate change, pollution, waste, biodiversity loss, amongst many others that are, directly related to the environment. So what I want to focus on maybe just are the three which are framed as kind of the triple planetary crisis: climate change, biodiversity loss, and soil degradation. So three, you may be familiar with these conventions. You have the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, probably the most famous one with the COP conferences that happen every year. That deals specifically with the problem of climate change. And then we have the UN Convention on Biodiversity Loss, UNCBD, lesser known one, but increasingly becoming more popular as we really come to understand the value of biodiversity and how much biodiversity has been damaged and lost in particularly the last few decades. And really there's, this awakening of we need to safeguard biodiversity, even, biodiversity of the gut. I'm hearing this so much more, that we need, a diverse diet to really ensure the biodiversity of our gut. So we can see, this word biodiversity becoming increasingly valued in society, and the need to really protect diversity in all its forms. And then the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, UNCCD, which addresses land and soil health, including the protection of land and land restoration. Historically, these three conventions have really worked separately, but there's an increasing awareness of the interconnectedness of the issues of climate change, biodiversity loss, and desertification. And it may seem, absurd that these things have not been connected previously, but just it's only recently, maybe in the last 2 years, maybe, that they have started interacting with one another, and synergies are being created between these three issues. So hopefully we'll start to see a more coordinated effort to tackle these issues. before I go into that, so I really feel that, you know, it's important that we are aware of these international agreements. As I mentioned, and we cannot really just leave it up to, you know, governments and corporations to make decisions on how we're going to tackle climate change, biodiversity loss, desertification, because they tend to have very specific agendas or interests, and the voices of, you know, ordinary people, civil society, can get left out. And the UN Charter, it refers to, you know, opens with "we the peoples." So for it to truly reflect the people's needs, then it really needs the voices of civil society to engage. And we can actually have a real impact when we do, by showing up into these spaces, and really sharing what the stories are from the ground, because there can be a real gap between policy and lived experiences. So where civil society, when we engage, we really bring in those perspectives that can get lost. But also, it's not just about, you know, showing up to conferences and, you know, being involved. That's really unrealistic for many of us. So where I see, where, you know, in terms of the policy process, where there's a real potential to create change is in the policy implementation part, which, you know, really means how do we actually actualize these policies? What does it mean in real life? So why I focus on the SDGs in my work is because, you know, it's such a broad categories of issues, and, you know, they provide a framework that we can, you know, take action with, whether it's gender equality, climate action, peace, justice. We can find one of those goals that we really want to work towards, and really think in our own way. Well, what does it mean? You know, what does realizing gender equality mean in my family, even? And how can I really, so we can all take action in our own way. So yeah, if we choose not to engage, if we kind of have the opinion that, you know, change is the responsibility of governments and businesses only, and we decide not to, you know, show up in these processes, we're effectively leaving the decisions about our life and our society up to governments and businesses to make. And then we really need to ask ourselves, are we okay with this? And if not, then we need to take some action. But also returning to the point of the triple planetary crisis, the issues of climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution are all very real issues that need efforts from everybody. You know, it's really down to everybody in society to work together and try to find a way to see what actions actually we can take. So one particular thing that I want to mention, because I became quite personally inspired by this, and it's an issue that we hear about so much, but it's one that is very easy not to do anything about, and that is plastic pollution. And it might be, we might be thinking, gosh, I've heard about plastic pollution so much, but actually in September of this year, there's going to be a new treaty, a new international agreement specifically addressing plastic pollution. And this has never happened before. And I actually, when I went to a climate change conference, no, actually, it was in Nairobi for the civil society conference that happened in May. I had an opportunity to meet the secretary for the Intergovernmental Negotiations Committee for the Plastic Pollutions Treaty. I don't know how I remember to say that off the top of my head, but basically she was in charge of coordinating this new treaty on plastic pollution. And just really hearing what she had to say about plastic pollution really kind of a light bulb moment went off in my head. Like, actually, I've heard about this so much that I've almost become very sensitized to the issue. And I really want to do more, because plastic pollution is such a huge issue. And this photo is the moment when it was agreed that this plastic pollution treaty could go ahead. And it took years of coordinating between member states for them to agree on this treaty. So it was a real kind of victory moment that happened at the UN Environmental Assembly in March 2022. And you can see people celebrating that, because it took a lot of effort to actually get countries to agree that this is a problem that we need to tackle, which again sounds quite absurd, but trying to get 92 countries or something to agree on that, to agree that something is an issue is not an easy thing to do. That's why things take so long. So what this plastic, sorry, I won't try to take up too much more time, but this plastic pollution treaty aims to prevent anything new from any new plastic from entering the environment to pollute it. So no new plastic production by 2040. It aims to promote better product design to reduce plastic use, and it aims to improve recycling. So as we all know, plastic pollution is a huge crisis, and it is something that has really, really ramped up in the last few decades. We are now producing so much more plastic than we ever did, and most of this is ending up in landfills, or just in the ocean. Just environment is being used as a dustbin for plastic, basically. And I'm sure we all know, the problem of microplastics in our foods, in our water supplies. So we are really, really, confronted by a huge issue with plastic pollution. So this plastic pollution the plastic pollution treaty for the first time is really aiming to tackle this huge issue for us. And single-use plastics are everywhere in our homes, and it's become so widespread that it's kind of taking for granted a bit about just how much plastic pollution is out there and integrated into our homes every day. So just a few things that we can do to support this treaty, because it's all well and good having an international agreement, but actually, if it doesn't get implemented, then it will actually have little meaning. So for it to be effective, we all need to play our part. So some things that we can do in our homes, maybe us here being attracted by this type of webinar are already kind of on it. We're using glass bottles or whatever else we're using, and we're really reducing our plastic waste. So what we can really do is try to talk to others about this issue and to really highlight this as a problem. To develop consciousness around plastic use. In terms of businesses, she spoke about returning to a refill economy, and she mentioned that we have a huge socio-economic discrimination in the way that in current purchasing systems, where we really have to buy things in bulk, whereas she spoke about previously we just buy what we needed to buy on the day, but having to buy in bulk, multi-packs and all things like this has a social justice issue as well, but also it's creating a huge environmental problem as well. So if we're business owners, or we have connections to businesses, we can really try to advocate for what she termed as a refill economy, so that we may see some shops popping up in our communities where you can bring jars and you can fill up just what you need. So these kind of things we can really advocate for. And then also, she was saying that we can really be pressure points for our governments to hold governments accountable for supporting the treaty, because not every country has signed up to support this treaty. So if our country hasn't, we can really advocate and put pressure on our governments to do that. So that I'm going to end there because I'm aware of the time. But just to say, I think, yeah, to highlight plastic pollution is something that we can just think, I know that it's a problem, but not actually do anything. But with this, with this international effort now, there really hopefully will be a pull towards really combating the plastic pollution crisis that we are having, and we can really be a part of that. I'll stop there, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lucy. I think it was very enlightening and informative. I will introduce the last speaker, Merylene, to this conversation. So, Merylene, a spiritual eco-activist and professional with 17 years of experience in social and sustainable architecture. So she's the founder of the Religious for Peace Interfaith Youth Climate Forum, and is actively involved with several NPOs advocating for youth peace building and environmental activities. So, Merylene, please welcome, and it's over to you.
So, Jigrudev and Namaste to everyone, and thank you for inviting me on this webinar to speak on eco actions in our homes to live a more sustainable and holistic lifestyle. It's wonderful to be in this space again and with familiar faces and to learn together. And I love the presentations and the sharing that has happened so far. And, Julie shared on the family unit, and it was beautifully presented, about caring and in a loving way, doing eco actions as a family. And that peace and charity starts with us and begin at home. And it's so true, because we want to change government, we want to change the outside, but really it starts with us and it starts in our homes. So I think that was a beautiful way to start this webinar. And I think the perspective that I would like to take is that it's a bit of more integrating an architectural and an impact and spiritual perspective. And I'd like to go more into the psychological aspects of eco actions. And so I may overlap on what other speakers have said, but I'll just briefly touch on some of the things. So, there's many things we can do in our in our homes to make it eco-friendly, and it depends on our budget, our resources, and the availability we have. And technology and information is readily available for us to practically implement, whether it is through research, on the internet, in consultations with environmental consultants, and the thing is, just to highlight on some of these practical things that we can do. I mean, Julie shared it very beautifully in her presentation. And I think from an architectural perspective, I will highlight a few things that you can do practically to make our homes more eco-friendly. And that will be like, when we're building and we're renovating our homes, we have the choices to use more eco-friendly building materials and paints, but it requires us to do more research on the products and find out what's in it. We have opportunities to use gray water and rainwater tank systems for our gardens to save water. We have choices to use cleaner energy, such as solar energy. So we have solar panels, solar lights and geysers. And we have choices as well to turn our gardens at home into an organic farming for fresh produce with our own composting methods. That is organic, GMO-free, using GMO-free seeds and pesticides. And we also have the choice to recycle at home. And Lucy covered on that. She spoke about plastic pollution and the destructive effects of it. And we have the opportunity to separate our waste and recycle, which is something that we can do together as a family unit. And even also Julie highlighted, looking at our carbon footprint. We can carpool and reduce our expensive carbon footprint family holidays to just simplicity. And it means really like looking at our consumption patterns to reduce our consumption levels. And other practical things we can do, is consume less meat, go vegan, being aware of the impact of fossil fuels and agriculture farming that is contributing to climate change. And so these things are some things we can do. And it's just a few examples, and there's many more. but it all comes down to being active and making active, conscious choices every day and being committed to these changes and wanting it. And that's where the challenge lies. So I think to dive more into the psychological aspects of eco-action, one more powerful eco-action I want to recommend that you can do at home is meditation. And I know it might sound cliche, but it's a practice that we can do at home, and it's something practical that helps with changing habits and creating an eco-consciousness and changing our consciousness. And, our positive emotions and our negative emotions affect our surroundings. And meditation on a psychological level helps to change on a home level and at a global cosmic level, right? And so one of the things I do is I practice the earth meditation. And this is something that I do in my private capacity. I do it with family, with friends, and it's offering love, gratitude, and light and positivity to Mother Earth to create that earth connection. And there's something that we used very recently where we use the practice of chanting Om in a group practice and the earth meditation. And it helps a lot of people because recently we experienced tornadoes that destroyed a lot of homes and a community and left 2,000 people displaced. And it was something that helped them to psychologically heal from the after effects of experiencing extreme climate weather patterns. And then to dive a little bit more into the psychological aspects of eco-actions, doing these changes is not easy. It means we have to relook at our current lifestyles, reflecting on it, being honest, and seeing where it is unsustainable and unhealthy, and where it does not benefit the home, the body, the mind, the spirit, the family, and the earth. And it requires us to live simply, almost living like a minimalist. And this can be challenging and overwhelming. And it's something that Yuvin shared earlier. It can bring conflict. It can bring defensiveness among other family members and living with them. And here again, we have to be honest and sincere with each other. What are we willing to change and what are we not willing to change? These behavioral changes can be integrated into our daily lifestyles in small steps. And it can become something really positive, a transformational process where everyone in the household is at least willing to try and be open to it. So it doesn't feel like a mountain and a big hurdle to climb. And those that are not open to it, we can be that example to help them see a different way to live. But it also means being clear and not being a fundamentalist and trying to force people. It means being deeply spiritually rooted in patience, positivity, and kindness. Because they say it takes 21 days to change an habit. And so maybe if we tried one eco-action that the family used for 21 days, it would change our lifestyle. And so it can become fun, family goals, games, creative ways of sharing and engaging. So an example I will give, I do planting with my niece and nephew, and I teach them about climate change and about planting trees and how it helps. So it's something we can do with the family. And it means us being visionaries and looking at the bigger picture, the broader perspective of things, and how these culminate into collective eco-actions, and that can be done positively to mitigate climate change. And so people may see it, okay, it's a futile eco-action. What effect does it have? It really does. It has an effect because it's causing a global shift in consciousness and global patterns, and it's allowing in a shift in energy to live a more holistic lifestyle in harmony with the earth. So just to conclude, I just want to touch on to say that it requires us to have a more deeper spiritual connection to the earth. And this ties back to our roots in spirituality and to our faith and our faith teachings. But also it shows that we are interconnected. And so if we map out the root, being deeply rooted in our faith teachings and spiritual knowledge leads to a shift in consciousness. It leads to a change in behavioral lifestyle patterns. And it leads to eco-actions that create eco-homes and in return mitigates climate change. So we are promoting a more healthier lifestyle, a positive well-being for the body, mind, and spirit. And, Yuvin shared with me the checklist. And right now, the link has been shared just on timing with what I have to say. And, when I went through that checklist, I think it was just so beautifully done. And it's like, well done to Religions for Peace, United Kingdom, for sharing this with the community, because it's self-explanatory, but it's educational, and it's a well thought out plan to practically guide someone into eco actions on an individual level and household level. And it provides a really nice guide. So I think that's an amazing thing that was done and shared with everybody. And just to lastly highlight how our household items through our choices affect the current unhealthy global consumer system. And Lucy spoke about the consumer system in our presentations. I would refer to the book Confessions of an Eco-Sinner by Fred Pierce. If you ever get a chance, please read this book. It exposes the global system of mass production and consumerism. It is scary. It's literally a guy, he takes few household items such as coffee, chocolate, his cotton t-shirt, and he retraces and exposes the process and carbon footprint involved in manufacturing that one product. And he goes into exposing how waste from rich countries are shipped to poorer countries, how the cotton t-shirt that we are wearing is sold by children slaves in Bangladesh, and how palm oil used as an ingredient in pre-packed food items is causing so much deforestation that is leaving so many animals homeless. It's contributing to the lungs of our planet being destroyed, which is some of the world's most biodiverse forest, in return endangering species like the orangutan and the pygmy elephant and the Sumatran rhino. And it's just one ingredient in a product that has so much destruction behind it on a grand scale in the bigger earthly picture. So imagine what life would look like with our communities if we instead did one selfless, positive eco action that benefited the earth instead. Life would be so different and the earth would look so different. So I like to end off here by saying thank you so much. Thank you for helping me to express my thoughts and share my reflections, and to share in the space. And I hope that we can see the connection between creating eco action as an individual and in our homes and how it affects everything globally. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Merylene. Now I'll open the floor for questions or comments that people might have. It can also be, you can also share your own experience, what you do in your houses, or what you find challenging, or what inspires you, what motivated you to come here tonight. Please feel free to unmute yourselves, or if you prefer, you can also share in the chat.
I will go first.
Yeah.
to start everybody talking, because thank you for all our speakers to come and speak at this event. It is a huge topic, and the areas of work goes from Julie's home and intergenerational involvement to Lucy's global involvement to Merylene's spiritual level of how we engage with a problem like that. It just so goes to show the magnanimous task that we are facing, and that almost everything that Merylene was saying with all the products, how we have been through decades of advertising, just not thinking about where it comes from and what we leave behind. It is a fundamental thinking, like it's a change of heart, it's a change of thinking that we are so used to. And with the help of our speakers and our participants, I think we need to perpetuate this habit of talking about it and making people aware of what we are actually causing in the world, instead of just buying something easily that is mass produced without asking the cause, because there are too many who are too willing to just irresponsibly do things to the environment so that we can have a cheap product. So yeah, it's a huge task, and I welcome everybody to join in, and please be in touch with us, and give us your opinion on how we can make this go further than it already has. And I open the floor to everyone.
Really, thank you for that. It's really about a mindfulness instead of a mindlessness, isn't it? Like our consumerism seems to be so mindless. We buy without thinking. We buy without knowing why we're thinking. We shop till we're dropped and we don't know why. So I think, yeah, I think pulling in, like kind of weaving together all three presentations in the end, to me, I'm realizing it comes down to just a mindful approach to doing this, to making this happen. Yeah, because we got to do it. What's our choice?
Yeah, and adding to that, just to complement what Cindy was saying about the different aspects of the presentations, I think it really showcases how we do need all different perspectives, a holistic view, and I think that represents a lot of what families represent also in this conversation, because we can make the change that we want to see. We need to start with ourselves, and it's quite an impactful way to make change in our households to later expand, as we will also in the Eco Action Program, expand to community and then at society levels. What role do you see for architects in building new environmental friendly homes, especially for people that do not have the money to build it themselves? Merylene.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's a challenging one, especially if you don't have money, because money makes the things happen. And especially in the environmental space, to purchase solar energy and all these equipments do cost money. So I would say, if somebody is really want to engage in making their home architecturally environmentally friendly, it would be something that has to work towards saving a budget and working and building over time. It's not something that can happen overnight, unless you have the resources and the finances to make it happen. But there's also other ways to get around the situation, and that would be to get help. And there's many organizations that have the resources and that want to do this. And I mean, there was one program that went on in South Africa where the municipality was offering, it partnered up with a supplier, and they were offering solar geysers to all the houses in the neighborhood, and all you have to do was to apply for it. But these things happen very rarely, and that was something that happened. So I think it's about, maybe it's an intervention. We have to work with other stakeholders and government to see how they can support homes to make it more eco-friendly that do not have the finances. Like I know currently in South Africa, we have a lot of water and electricity problems. And so we have to look at ways of having a rainwater tank systems and all these things. And if municipality and government helped and supported the homes and communities with this, it will help the person that cannot afford it and it's not within their budget. So it's a very complicated, I would say, topic if you do not have finances. Because if you have finances, then it's easy to do these changes because these things are quite costly. Also say that, I mean, in terms of do it yourself, DIY, yourself at home kind of stuff, there's a lot of things that are available that you can do on a small scale that won't cost money. And I mean, it's like using recyclable ways of doing things. And there's a lot of information out there. And I'll give you small little examples would be to repurpose rainwater gutters and use it as a means for a garden, or repurposing crates and building kind of shelves in your home. So you're repurposing materials. I mean, another thing that people do is they repurpose tires, that's been thrown aside, and it causes a lot of carbon footprint and pollution, and they repurpose it and they create gardens out of it. We plant vegetables in it. We use it in a different way. So, I mean, it's sort of like, being a garbage warrior. That's another really cool documentary if you ever want to watch. It's this architect in Australia, and he goes through so much length and problems trying to make homes, eco homes, but also creating homes made out of earth after destruction of climate change and tornadoes and tsunamis. And he goes to the extent of fighting a court battle in a court case and loses it with the Australian government. And eventually he goes to India where a tsunami hits, and he collects like plastic bottles. He fills it, he gets the kids, he pays them money. They fill it with plastic, and they build eco-homes for people who lost their homes out of plastic bottles and earth. And he makes homes for them. And it worked in India because it needed to be used for people who lost their homes. But in Australia, he had a difficult time. So there's a lot of research out there, and there are small interventions you can do that won't cost you out of your pocket, kind of thing.
Thank you. I was thinking, that our households are not just, individual islands in themselves, but are parts of communities. So we engage with our faith community, with schools, local schools, with local community organizations, things like the library or community gardens, that sort of thing. And there's those are other ways in which we as individuals and as households can make a difference within the wider community as well.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's our next webinar.
Yeah.
We go from the self to the home to the community, and lastly we go to the society, which is one step. That how do we transform ourselves from being these, well-functioning homes and communities into getting our government to listen and help us with legislation, so that we don't have to, I think all the plastic plates should cost £10 each. That will stop them. Like, it depends on what we do, and that one step from the home to the community to the government, that is the longest step, and we need to find ways to pave that way so that normal people can also be that create that pressure, because it's really no joke anymore.
Can always contact us for questions. Maybe you forgot to ask some questions. Maybe after we finish the end of this webinar, you say, "Oh man, but I should have asked that, or I should have said that." Just feel free to contact us, or maybe we're too shy. We can, if it is a question to one of the speakers, I'm happy to forward to them. I'm very sure that they don't mind taking questions after the session. So if that is all, I hope that everyone enjoyed our speakers, the talk, also the participants' comments and questions are very, very important. We hope to see you again. As Cindy mentioned, our next step will be community. So we will be holding another webinar on community, what we can do as a community. So keep an eye on our activities. If you can, follow us on social media or sign up to our newsletter. I will share the recording of this webinar with you shortly, together with all the resources, so you can rewatch or you can share also with your friends, your family, and get more people inspired, so we can make a great impact. Thank you again to the speakers and to all participants, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of your evening.